Hominis Imperium. Sovereign Man. Part 1. The History of Common Law. King Alfred, also known as Alfred the Great, 847 to 899. Son of King Ethelwulf, probably best known for burning the cakes. However, there are other achievements of which I am rather more proud of. The thing most people consider to be my greatest achievement was to defeat the Vikings. Although a great achievement, I believe the most important was to empower the people with their sovereignty, enabling them to live in peace under universal law, God's law, empowering them under the law of the land, common law, constitutional law in the USA. Live in peace, do no harm. King John, 1167 to 1216. Fifth son of Henry II and younger brother of Richard the Lionheart. Best known as Prince John in Robin Hood films. His coffers were bare after Richard had embarked on an expensive crusade to the Holy Land, and then he was defeated by the French in 1204. He began taxing the population to the hilt, and was even excommunicated by Pope Innocent in 1209 for plundering churches, and refusing to make Cardinal Langton Archbishop of Canterbury. The barons rebelled, forcing the king to sign the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta, the Great Charter of 1215, is a document guaranteeing English political liberties. Drafted at Runnymede, a meadow on the south bank of the River Thames, and was signed by King John on Monday the 15th of June 1215 under pressure from his rebellious barons. By declaring that the sovereign to be subject to the rule of law and documenting the liberties held by free men. The Great Charter of 1215. The Royal Charter promised the protection of church rights, protection from illegal imprisonment, access to swift justice and limitations to payments to the Crown. The Charter's 63 clauses guaranteed that government, royal and otherwise, would be limited by the written law of the land. Pope Innocent declared the document not only shameful and demeaning, but also illegal and unjust. It was annulled by John, who then declared war on the barons. Some were pursued to Rochester Castle, where they made a stand. Unable to breach the keep walls with siege engines, the king dug under the castle wall, filled the hole with wood and a drove of pigs, then set it alight, causing the outer castle wall to collapse. Some of the barons had their hands and feet cut off in retaliation. Whilst pursuing the remainder of the barons, King John caught dysentery and died on Monday the 19th of October 1215. The charter was then reinstated by his son, Henry III, 1216 to 1272, on November 12, 1216, fearing invasion by the French after his father had been defeated in Normandy the previous year, and needed the might of the barons on his side. King John was said to be appalling on the battlefield and had the nickname Softsword. The Late Middle Ages, 1250 to 1500. 1264. Parliament takes shape. 1297. Magna Carta reissued by King Edward I and incorporated into Parliament. 1620. Mayflower docks in Plymouth. Pilgrims sign the Mayflower Contract. 1628. Petition of Rights created. 1679. Habeas Corpus Act in Parliament. 1689. Bill of Rights passed in Parliament. Petition of Rights, Wednesday the 7th of June 1628, was sent by Parliament to King Charles I, complaining of his breaches of law. Charles I, 1625-1649. Absolutist. Like most kings of the era, Charles I was short of money, owing to disastrous wars in Spain. When Parliament refused to give him more money, he dismissed it 3 times, and vowed to rule alone. However, he was forced to reinstate Parliament after an uprising in Scotland, when he tried to force a new prayer book on the country and needed money to crush the rebellion. Parliament then wrote the Petition of Rights on Wednesday the 7th of June 1628. Charles then declared war on Parliament in 1642 but was defeated in 1645 and was later executed. The Petition of Rights contained 4 main points. 1. No taxes could be levied without consent of Parliament. 2. No English subject could be imprisoned without cause. 3. No quartering of soldiers in citizens' homes. 4. No martial law may be used in peacetime. Charles II, 1660 to 1685. After the beheading of his father on the 16th of January 1649, the Scots claimed him king, in defiance of the English Republic. The Scots were then routed by Cromwell at Dunbar, on Sunday the 3rd of September 1650, and finally defeated when Charles and the Scots invaded England on Sunday the 3rd of September 1651 at the Battle of Worcester. Charles escaped to France, but after 9 years was invited back to England on the 29th of May 1660, and crowned on Sunday the 1st of January 1661. However, with the disastrous Anglo-Dutch War of 1665 to 1667, the Great Plague of 1665, and the Great Fire of London in 1666, he became very unpopular. The people thinking that God's judgment was upon the king. Fearing what had happened to his father, he dissolved Parliament on or around March 21, 1681, and ruled with autocracy until his death on Tuesday the 6th of February 1685. The Glorious Revolution. 1688 to 89. After Charles died in 1685, he was replaced by his younger brother James II 1685-88. His reign was taken up mostly with religious problems, and he was eventually ousted by his daughter Mary, and her husband, William III, William of Orange. William invaded England and landed in Brixham on Monday, November 15, 1688. James's officers deserted to William. James fled but was captured, although he later escaped to France on Wednesday, January 12, 1689. The next day Parliament declared that he had abdicated and offered the crown to Mary and William on the supposition that they would sign a Declaration of Rights. Later to become a bill, drawn up by Parliament to limit the sovereign's power. The Bill of Rights 1688-89. The beginning of the shift from autocratic power from the monarchy, back to the people. A landmark act in the constitutional law of England. It lays down the limits of the power of the monarch, and sets out the rights of Parliament, including freedom of speech, free elections, prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, and no taxation by the Crown without the consent of Parliament. It also described and condemned several misdeeds of James II and other monarchs of England. It was used as a model for the United States Bill of Rights in 1789. Blackstone's Commentaries on the Law of England. Sir William Blackstone 1765. Blackstone's Commentaries on the Law of England was the first treatise to comprehensively describe common law, as it was in England in the 18th century. They originated as lectures that were delivered by Blackstone at Oxford University, the first of which was at Michaelmas Term in 1763. It was then first published by the Clarendon Press at Oxford in 1765-70. It contained an introduction and 4 sections: rights of persons, rights of things, private wrongs, public wrongs. Summary of further events. 1789 French Revolution. Declaration of the Rights of Man. 1789 Jeremy Bentham. The Principles of Morals and Legislation. 1792 Peterloo Massacre. 18 people killed and hundreds injured by a cavalry charge on a demonstration for democracy. 1832 Representation of the People Act. The Reform Act. 1867 The Second Reform Act. 1911 The Parliament Act. Powers of the House of Lords reduced. 1918 Female Suffrage Act. Voting rights for women. 1935 Social Security Act. Labor Relations Act. Wagner Act. 1947 Nuremberg Code. Banning of human experimentation. 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, United Nations. 1970 Clean Air Act. 1972 Clean Water Act. 2022 Police and Crime Bill. The Police and Crime Bill 2022. A dark cloud hangs over our government of late. Our inalienable rights and freedom of speech seem to be drifting slowly into oblivion. The new Police and Crime Bill is certainly pointing to the fact. The bill gives the police powers to stop and search anyone without cause, and crackdowns on public demonstrations. A new public nuisance law has been implemented. It has also given the Home Secretary the right to decide what he or she thinks that nuisance should be deemed as. It was implemented under the cover of the Boris Partygate. Slipped through without a whisper. Pandemic Preparedness Treaty. A proposal by the World Health Organization. Its purported aims: to improve prevention, preparedness, and response to future pandemics at a global level. To ensure sustained and long-term political commitment. Its actual aims, working alongside the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and the United Nations, the treaty would enable the unelected elite to bring in controls worldwide. If they consider there to be a future pandemic or major incident, they would be able to take total control worldwide, enabling them to bring in their planned new world order and the United Nations Agenda 2030. United Nations Agenda 2030. Goals: 1 world government, 1 world CBDC currency, 1 world central bank, 1 world military, end of sovereignty, end of ownership, end of family unit, government-raised children, mandatory multiple vaccines, universal basic income, microchipped society. All property confiscated, state-owned, world social credit system, all appliances connected to 5G, all business state-owned, human settlement zones, 15-minute cities, depopulation, 7.5 billion to 4 billion, end of irrigation, state-owned GM farms, ban on non-synthetic drugs, end of fossil fuels, ban on non-essential air travel. What is actually going on? The Great Reset. Ever since sterling was removed from being silver-backed by the then Prime Minister Ramsay MacDonald in the 30s, we have been using the fiat system. This meant that money was actually worthless in real terms. It was fantastic for the banks, because they could just print money whenever they wanted. If they wanted to buy a company, they could just print the money and basically get it for nothing. However, this meant that more money was in circulation, so the value of the pound in your pocket was worth less, and goods became more expensive. More fiat money has been printed in the last 4 years than in all time previously. The government are paying more interest to the banks than on both NHS and defense. This is unsustainable, and a deliberate ploy for the WEF, World Economic Forum, to be able to bring in their Agenda 2030. They have to collapse the monetary system, the Great Reset. The intention is to bring in central bank digital currencies, digital identities, and digital wallets, among other nefarious things not mentioned. This is intended to tighten the noose around our necks and bring us into line. However, although it looks quite bad on the surface, underneath is a much scarier prospect. Once they collapse the system to bring in the new currency, all banks will be closed. You will not be able to get your money. Debit and credit cards will not work. No fuel, which means food shortages and more. A collapse of society. The trap will have been sprung. Create a catastrophe, then provide the solution. Wonderful people. Thank you so much. What can we do? For the overwhelming majority of us, we now find ourselves in a realm where we are incapable, on our own, to do anything about it. The overwhelming majority of us just need to live in peace and love. The ideal would be to join with every other soul on the planet, whatever creed or religion, eliminating war and hatred. Alone we cannot do much other than complain. Together, we can. Groups are now starting up across the world. Organizations like the Community Assembly of the World are growing stronger by the day. Here in the UK, there is the Community Assembly of the British Isles. They are organizing local communities across the country. Good people, joining together in peace, working to raise the vibration of the wonderful planet we are privileged to belong to. Please join in and become part of the movement to heal the earth.